Okay, I think we have everyone here.
And 4 of your speakers are in the waiting room, and I'll let them in momentarily here. Whenever you're ready, I'll let them in as well.
Okay. So the first thing, okay. So can I have a motion to reconvene?
Will, you can go ahead and make it live.
Oh, is it not live yet? I thought it was live.
Is it live? Okay, all right.
Is it live? Okay. I'd like to have a motion to reconvene in the open session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So I do the all in favor.
Aye.
Peter, Susan Fox,
Aye.
Susan Manning.
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Aye.
Lorraine.
Aye.
Did I miss anybody? Andrew, aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. We're going to begin this meeting by recognizing that our community has suffered a devastating loss after the death of a student. The Board of Education sends our deepest condolences to those impacted by this loss. Now we focus on wrapping the family, our students, and staff in love and support as we process and grieve. And to our families, we are here to support you. A comprehensive list of resources emailed to our families yesterday is also available on our website. Our student services staff is also available to help. If you or your student needs support, please visit our website and click on Student Services Resources at the bottom of its homepage. Please take care of one another. And right now, I'd like to give a moment of silence for the student at this moment. Thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and go with public appearances. First is Brian Frederick.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for all your efforts, by the way, over the past year and so on. I can't comprehend how it's been for you guys, and it's deeply appreciated by everybody in the Monona Grove community. My name is Brian Frederick. I'm an 8th grade teacher at GDS. I am also co-president of the Monona Grove Education Association. I'm here tonight to discuss the process of developing the new schedule for GDS and its impact on education programming for students. The information shared with GDS teachers about next year's schedule and staffing plan is a dramatic change from our current schedule and teaching model. Those changes have had a ripple effect across the district to music and related art staff in many buildings. However, the decision-making process did not involve most staff members at GDS, and a full discussion by all staff in order to hear how proposed changes would impact departments across all grade levels and impact curriculum delivery didn't take place. No draft schedules were presented to the GDS staff as a whole group for input or refinement. When the new schedule was presented to staff, this was done in small department meetings. The result of this lack of communication is that most staff have little knowledge about how the proposed schedule impacts curricular areas other than their own. In addition, the district process for proposing and approving new courses has not been implemented consistently at GDS. Only some curricular areas were asked to develop new courses, while others are not even permitted to draft proposals. The MGA supports a process that includes collaborative work with teachers and staff when major schedule changes are considered. Often the staff will have creative solutions to problems that the district wishes to solve, for example, traveling staff and scheduling. please vote to postpone approval of the certified staffing plan for 2021-22 until you schedule a meeting to hear from teachers and the MGA about the impact of dramatic changes to staffing, teaching, and student learning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brian. Next, we have Janet Heineman.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Janet Heineman. I am a music teacher here in Monona Grove. I teach 6th through 12th grade orchestra. I'm also a parent of 2 elementary schoolers here in Monona Grove. The MG Music Department has been successful in delivering high musical achievement and equitable learning opportunities for students through the current co-teaching model of instruction. Our mission statement and equity non-negotiables both address the research-based practices of co-planning and co-serving as cornerstones of effective instruction. The recent allocation changes to our 612 course offerings, which include the elimination of team teaching in middle school choir and high school band, have surprised all of us. Allocations also reduced and even eliminated one of our elementary music educators. I'd like to discuss how the equity non-negotiables apply to our current team teaching model. Our co-teaching model in music is no different than what our math and ELA colleagues do collaboratively with special education or advanced learning teachers in a fully inclusive classroom. Because our specialized skills as musicians and practitioners, we know how to best differentiate for all learners. I think it's fair to assume that a special ed teacher would struggle to help a student on their caseload with, say, a spiccato bowing style in my orchestra classroom, much in the same way that I wouldn't feel qualified to scaffold instruction to solve for X in algebra class. Most recently, as quoted in our Return to Learning document, co-planning and co-serving will stay an integral part of our instructional service delivery. The music department is able to successfully include students with exceptional needs in our classrooms due to this co-teaching model. In closing, I'd like to speak to the impact of these potential allocation cuts that, again, are seemingly unsubstantiated because we have not been brought to the table for discussion. The most visible output of what we do, Strings Festival, marching band, show choir, and the musical, are all a direct result of the collaborative work of multiple teachers. The performances that you, our board, have appreciated over the years are just one tiny part of the big picture. These things do not just happen in a vacuum because kids are talented. They happen because of the thoughtful, meaningful, and engaging work that we do as a co-planning and co-serving team. We are able to engage and include students of all abilities, accommodate for every individual student, and validate social emotional learning for all when we co-teach. Please don't exempt music courses from these district protocols. I urge you to postpone approval of the certified staffing plan for 2021-22 until you can schedule a meeting to hear from teachers and the MGAA about the impact of the dramatic changes to staffing, teaching, and student learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Next, Cara Collins. I pronounced that right?
Yeah, you got it right. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening. My name is Cara Collins. I teach high school and middle school band in our district. I would like to make the board aware of the staffing reallocations and decrease in educational opportunities for students at the middle school and high school in our music departments. These changes are being driven by the new GDS schedule. For over 30 years, the band department has co-taught band classes. This co-teaching model was initiated at the high school and then moved to the middle school band program. It was such an effective model that choir and orchestra adopted the co-planning, co-serving model as well. This year and for many years, the only secondary music classes that are not co-taught at the high school are choir classes. However, the impact of the new GDS schedule and corresponding new staffing assignments will dramatically curtail this successful co-teaching model. High school band is losing a co-teacher, and the one remaining teacher has been reallocated to teaching new music courses. This leaves one part-time high school band director to work with groups of 40 to 60 students at a time, despite the very public presence of the high school band and that it has on our community. No other comparably sized high school band program in Dane County is staffed with less than one band teacher, and at least 4 others also use the co-teaching model. Although choir has been co-taught at the middle school for 20 years, the middle school choir program is completely losing their co-planning, co-serving model, and one of the choir teachers is being reassigned to teach kindergarten music. Historically, at one point when Winnequa was the middle school choir position had a 1.5 FTE. Since then, choir staffing has been eroded to its current level. Winnequa is losing a part-time general music teacher, Even though the staff member has been a valuable team member who has taken on additional duties, specifically co-teaching band this year to make the virtual schedules between GDS and the high school work. We believe that the staffing change will shift remaining elementary music teachers to teaching more than 100% of the minutes required for full-time. As a music department, we value co-teaching and co-planning to meet the needs of all of our students. Co-teaching and co-planning is such a gem in the Monona Grove School District. Why would we want to get rid of something that makes students successful and our district unique? We agree that it can be difficult to schedule traveling staff, but we do not think it is reasonable that the middle school has driven all of the change for the other buildings. If we keep students at the center of what we do, we believe we can work together to find solutions. But as of yet, we have not been given the opportunity to collaborate on the middle school schedule or its impact on our programs. We are asking you please to postpone the vote or postpone approval of the certified staffing plan for next year, the 21-22 year, until you schedule a meeting to hear from the teachers and the MGEA about the impact of dramatic changes to staffing, teaching, and student learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Cara. Next, we have Laura Nahiranak. Did I pronounce that right?
That was very close. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening,
Can
administrators.
you help them with that? With the Naherniak.
Nahirniak. Okay,
Yak.
thank you.
Naherniak, if you were pronouncing the Ukrainian way, it would be Nahirniak, but Naherniak is great.
Okay.
Good evening, administrators and Board of Education, and thank you for listening to me this evening. As you know, I will be retiring at the end of this school year, and I want to thank you for supporting me and the music program throughout my 32 years at Monona Grove. I'd like to speak with you about the impact our music program has had on our community. Throughout my tenure, about 19,000 people have watched hundreds of choir students and alumni sing the Hallelujah Chorus at the end of the winter concert. In fact, I think there is a picture of that hanging in the district office. Nearly 36,000 people have witnessed standing room only show choir competitions, and almost 56,000 people have attended the 4 through 12 string festivals and 6 through 12 choir festivals in the high school gymnasium. It is also estimated that more than 90,000 people have attended sold-out musical performances. And perhaps the granddaddy of them all is the Memorial Day Parade, in which it is estimated that 640,000 people have watched our beloved marching band. Year after year, packed streets, gymnasiums, and auditoriums have been filled with community members because they know the MG Music Department will present stunning performances. Now, this ongoing success isn't because of one teacher, but it's due to this well-oiled machine of our entire music department and music curriculum, beginning in the elementary schools and continuing throughout high school. Now, after 32 years, this success may be in jeopardy due to proposed music cuts and staffing changes that eliminate co-teaching at many levels. I urge you to postpone voting on the staffing plan tonight until you can schedule a meeting and hear from the teachers and MGEA about the impact of the proposed changes to student instruction and participation in the arts. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for your service here in the school district.
You're very welcome.
Next is Carl Davik. Davik? Did I pronounce it right?
I go with a long A, Davik.
Davik. Okay.
Yeah.
All righty.
Or Davik from Norway. But I'm Carl Davik, and I'm an orchestra instructor at the high school and at Glacier Drumlin Middle School. And thanks for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. You've heard from several of my music colleagues tonight, and I too am here to speak about reductions in music allocation and what will be lost opportunities for students. Um, and the reason I'm able to be here tonight is because of the actions that two co-teaching high school band instructors took almost 29 years ago before I was hired. It was then that the orchestra program was being considered for elimination because of low participation. And these two instructors, Doug Terhune and Pat Dorn, spoke up and said that the program shouldn't be eliminated, but rather it just needed that right person that will stay, work tirelessly, and do its best for kids. That was 29 years ago. And over that time, I've tried to do just that, do what's best for kids. That's what all of us here tonight strive to do every day. And at every meeting, all of us, we're trying to do what's best for kids. It's why I'm speaking tonight about the issue of losing the co-teaching model, because it is that model that is proven to be best for kids. We've had the opportunity to meet frequently over the last 2 months, and there's still confusion and unclarity as to why these reductions are happening. It's unclear if it's a financial decision or an instructional practice, philosophical based decision. It's why I ask, as my colleagues mentioned earlier, that you don't vote on the staffing plan that's on the agenda for tonight until such time that we can meet to begin to get some clarification and work together to ensure that students do not lose the musical opportunities that families of the district have come to expect. I continue to be grateful to all you do for students and staff of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. All right, we're going to move to the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Wait, just a second. I would like to pull off of the consent agenda the contract amendments so that the community can fully see this occurrence. And I don't need a second. We just pull it and then we bring it back up when we're done with the consent agenda.
But then I'll change my motion to say I move approval of the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item number 4, approval of staff contract amendments.
Second.
All right. Any concerns or questions? Any? Hearing none, all in favor, Susan Fox,
Aye.
Susan Manning,
Aye.
Lorraine,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Elizabeth.
Aye.
Andrew, aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries.
So then
move from
we have to
recognition.
deal with we still have to deal with number 4 then. The staff contract amendments. So Susan, I guess your intent is to ask for an explanation of those, or
Okay.
what's your intent?
Yeah.
So, Susan Manning,
Yes. I'm just requesting an understanding of the 5 contract amendments and what's the direct relationship that's causing those reductions. I just think it's important that the board clearly be aware that we have 5, which is significant. I understand with the COVID and the in-person and the hybrids and the changes, but I need for administration to provide the information to me so I have a better understanding of what the cause is for these amendments.
Dan or any administrator, do you have anything?
Sure, I'll go. So let's go one by one. So the first 4 are all dealing with the number of sections of related arts at the elementary level. Okay, so later in the agenda, you'll see the updated enrollment projections and the number of sections per grade level, and then the impact that has on the number of FTEs. So for every homeroom that we have in grades K through 5, we have art, music, and Phi Ed that correspond along with those homerooms. And so every year there's an adjustment based upon the number of homerooms that we have in each school on the part-time FTE that is needed in order to, fill all of those or to teach all those sections. And so in this case, if you'd like me to go each one, Brooke Crago is a general music teacher. Her initial FTE for this school year is 0.56. It was increased to 0.73 for the second semester, again, due to the scheduling with the school reopening to give some more flexibility. And so she picked up some additional sections. So the reduction by contract is from 0.73 to 0.50. In reality, from her original assignment, it's from 0.56 to 0.50. Okay, so essentially a section a week. Kate Ryan is a physical education at Winnequa. Same thing, because of the number of sections needed at Winnequa, the FTE needed for that position is reduced by 0.06. Brittany Burns is a physical education teacher at Taylor Prairie. And again, looking at overall needs for next year, that part-time need reduces from 0.62 to 0.36. Likewise with Nick Garcia, part-time art teacher who has worked both between Winnequa and Cottage Grove School, small reduction of 0.04. And then Sarah Bagstad is the one that's a little bit different. She's currently at GDS, teaches both 5th grade and middle school. And with the moving of 5th grade, removing from GDS, we normally would have had that FT transfer. We actually have a slight increase of overall FIDA and health at GDS because we're adding additional 6th grade health. So the FTE for grades 6 through 8 actually increases, and then Sarah would remain as part of that 6-8 versus taking away the 5th grade. So before I stop there, principals, who these folks work in your buildings, any corrections or clarifications from what I just said?
The only thing is that we added 8th grade health. We've always had 6th grade. We just added 8th grade, not 6th grade health.
Thank you.
Eric?
Dan, I just have a question. Isn't these contract amendments, don't they coordinate with the certified staffing plan?
They do.
Okay, thank you. So I guess just a quick follow-up. I'm wondering if we should move them to action item L3 when we discuss the certified staffing plan, since they're kind of tied together. Or that's a question for other board members. Sorry, Andrew.
Susan Manning, did you have a question?
I just wanted to make sure I'm clearly understanding this. So Dan, the changes are due to enrollment changes, effectively not scheduling changes, right?
Correct, 100%.
These are all elementary, basically.
Correct.
Elementary grade levels. So
Elizabeth, did you have your hand up? Okay. So did you, so Dan, could we just go ahead and move that to?
Actually, Andrew,
Yes.
I would make a motion to approve the staff contract amendments as presented, because I think they're very separate. So I go ahead and make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right.
And
Anyone?
again, the reason I
Listen.
made that motion is because I feel like these are not related to the changes at GDS. They're totally elementary. So it makes sense to me to go ahead and deal with this and then move on with the other topic.
And these are contract amendments that have already been discussed and agreed to with the teachers involved, correct?
That is correct.
Right.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Lorraine?
Aye.
Susan Fox?
Aye.
Susan Manning?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
And Andrew, aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving to recognitions will be included in the May meeting. Going to correspondence and announcements, the board members can read those correspondence as well. Moving to superintendent report.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, just a short update with regard to reopening. I know we have it later in the agenda for discussion with regard to the phase 5, but just some information just to share. You have on there the updated enrollment figures for K through 12. Those are all based upon the 4-day per week. And so those documents are attached for your information. And then the second piece that I wanted to note is that the school facilities operating plan, which essentially are all of our plans for dealing with the pandemic, for hygiene and safety and so on, those are being reviewed and we'll be making final updates soon here before our middle and high school we expand to 4 days. The last order from Public Health Madison-Dane County really didn't have any major changes with regard to our school operations. And so the guidance is very similar, some slight changes with requirements for what we have for planning, and those are all part of the plan. So that's kind of the big picture about what's happening with reopening. Is I have the data for you for the choice of parents, and then to let you know that we are making final adjustments to the operating plan for the remainder of the school year. Since we're going to be talking about the secondary reopening a little bit later, we also have the elementary principals available too, in case any board members have questions about the 4K5 current instruction in their buildings.
Okay. Eric?
Oh, I would like to hear from the elementary principals how the 4K5 has been going. We're on our second week, is that right? For full-time, back full-time? I'm curious to see how everything's been going so far. I know my daughter's been incredibly excited to get back and meet some people, and she's having a great time. So I'm curious from the principals how it is at your end.
We'll let the big dog Reed do it first.
I'll go. So for my perspective, because I'm so new still, like this was like my first time truly having kids. And so it was just really good, right? Because like we're all in this field because we love children, and, you know, like the interactions were just so positive to like not see them on a screen like you all. Even though I love seeing you guys on board meetings, it's very different when you are able to see our learners in person. And it feels good, right? Even though we have all of these things that we're doing to maintain the safety of the building to the best of our ability, it's just awesome to see, like, you know, their faces from here and up and their smiles with their eyes. You can see, you know, just like the high engagement. Our teachers are just like really into the lessons, really into the environment. And the community building is really positive. And so for me to start off, you know, virtually and, you know, coming on from COVID world to now experiencing COVID in person in the building is very different when we have all these measures that we took in place. And so it feels like a warm, welcoming environment. And honestly, it kind of feels more like school, like how we used to school. So it's not there yet, of course, right? There's still a lot of things that don't make it how it's probably never going to be that way. But honestly, it's just refreshing and it makes me feel very connected to the community.
Thanks, Danielle.
I can add to that. I have been absolutely thrilled with having more kids in the building every day. The kids are doing an awesome job keeping their masks on all day, other than the recess time and times that they're eating. They are impressing me. They are enjoying going to related arts classes and going to the gym and seeing the new art room that we have at Winnequa. They've been getting in the library and are loving, like, just in awe of the renovations at Winnequa in particular and getting in the library. So I think in the classroom, there's space as best as they can. The teachers have done a fabulous job of really building those classroom procedures to keep the kids spaced. Challenges with spacing come in transition times, right? When kids are moving around, that, you've got 20 kids in a line instead of 8. And so we're just trying to, continue to remind them about zombie arms, we call them, so that they stick their hands out and stay spaced apart. Similar things with transitioning from lunch to recess. As soon as they get in a line, they feel like they need to get together. So we're working on it. It's been 6 days. And so we keep, giving them reminders, but they're all just like really happy to be back. Staff have been, just amazing with helping them all transition. And so it's been actually really, really good and really, yes, feels like normal, like Danielle said.
Marie, do you want to go now or should I go? You've been trying to jump in twice now. Okay. I would agree a lot with Angie. You definitely see the smiles above their masks, and they are so happy to be back and to be with other kids. And it's so fun to hear them say, I have a friend, or I haven't, a new friend, or somebody likes me. And so that's been really cute to watch each day. We definitely are doing a lot of following procedures, and the group 1 that was there in January has really been helping, like the second group that has come. So it just feels like it's not taking them very long at all to understand. We call them airplane arms at our school, not zombie arms, but airplane arms, where they're trying to keep that distance from each other. It was new for the kids this time, as they were saying, to go to related arts, and that was kind of a new big eye-opening experience for them to go to another room and be with other teachers. So that was a fun experience. But each day they just really do seem to be in awe, and like Angie said, wearing masks has been, for the majority of the kids, has been just a very easy transition at school. And I think overall it's gone very well, and the teachers definitely love having their little friends in front of them. I mean, that's why they went into teaching, and you can just see kind of that love of teaching happening. It's certainly different virtual, but being in person is really what they love and they missed. So it's great.
I don't have a lot to add. I think everyone hit it on the head real well. I think just as the idea that you could say happy birthday to a student or announce it and they're in person versus calling them at home is kind of special. I also think don't want to not recognize our virtual students. I think some families have made that choice. We're still trying to make that as meaningful and connected. The one unknown or didn't really realize, having all the staff in the building, even the folks that teach virtually, just to swing down and stay, a distance from that teacher, but to get, in front of a screen versus being a square, but just going in there and waving to the virtual kids has been, a neat opportunity for Danielle and I just to see the students in that way. But ultimately, I think everybody hit it on the head. It's another transition. And so with that, we're continuing to remind folks of the safety measures that we have to follow and do our best, but ultimately it's closer to what we've always done, and that feels good.
Lorraine, you had a question?
Yes, it's great news to hear that things are going really well at each of your schools. Just wanted, you kind of touched on it lightly, but just wanted to talk about the social emotional aspect of it, and just to ask if were there any major hangups in this area at all? Have you seen, or?
I think for some kids, building the stamina has been a little bit challenging. And maybe the structure. I mean, just having you're on, right? From 8:30 to 2:30. And it is different. So I think for some kids, knowing what they need, maybe they need breaks or more sensory type of kind of opportunities through their day to help them, is some things that we need to recognize. But I think overall, like kids are, I don't know, they're coming around, and definitely have support staff to meet with kids that maybe need some extra opportunity just to talk to someone about maybe some things that are happening.
Eric?
Well, I just want to give a quick thank you to all the teachers, the principals, the administrative team, and the board, and the community as we've gone through this incredibly challenging transition. And I'm really glad to see that we've gotten to this point. And I know it hasn't been easy, but it's just, I just can't say enough positive things about everybody involved.
Okay, thank you. All right. So Dan, are you done with your
Andrew,
report?
Susan Manning had her hand up.
Oh, I'm switching.
I
I'm
just
sorry.
have one more question. And it's nice to have Mitch here because I know he's talked to us about this a little bit, and has really provided good insights into this. Could you give us just an update? Again, I know that as Lorene is looking at the social and emotional issues, I'm kind of looking at a piece of that, and that is just an update on the identification of the students. Remember, you in one of the last meetings, we had, as a board, received some information on students with failing grades, and you had implemented some processes for those students. And I just wondered if you could give us an update, and then if you've added anything or changed anything because of the back to school in person. I don't know.
So a few things there that I can speak to, Susan, related to that. Our pupil services team, our student services team, as well as our assistant principals and our case managers are bringing to our attention, students who are failing multiple classes and may be interested in coming back 4 days a week earlier. So we've been identifying students, notifying teachers, and hoping that more face-to-face or in-person attendance helps with that engagement. Been really leveraging our plus periods in the afternoon for a lot of that work. Met with coordinators last Friday and shared ideas and successes from plus periods. And one of the uses that teachers are finding success with is when they're able to meet with students one-on-one during that time, or in small groups during that time. Students who are missing assignments, trying to get caught up. Maybe they're in a hole and they need help to dig out, and providing that help to dig out of that hole. So the opportunity to meet with students during that time that are currently not passing has been successful. Also, our case managers have been really diligent and just persistent with the students that they're case managing, and using those plus periods in the afternoon to meet virtually or even in person with students to complete work, organize, kind of strategize around what they're missing, and get caught up. So it's those are some of the pieces related to your question, Susan, that we're continuing with.
And that you had that in place before, and that's still in place now. You're able to continue to do that with the in-person.
Yeah, we're able to continue that with the in-person, and we'll continue it when we come back on the 26th with the 4-day week.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more on the superintendent's report?
So I do have a second piece. If Okay, if we're
Okay.
ready to move on. Just a quick update with regard to the SRO evaluation. We'd mentioned that we will check in every month with the board. And so I shared with you a link that will be live soon to our webpage that will be available publicly about the work that we're doing with the evaluation. You also should have seen by email a message that went out to all staff this week, in fact, today, about looking at a survey as well as scheduling focus groups. And so you'll see on the summary of where we're at currently in the program review here in April, we're focusing on staff feedback through survey and focus groups. May we'll move on to with students, June, then with family and community. So we know that's a really important part of the evaluation is getting the feedback from all stakeholders. Eric may speak to this a little bit later with TLE committee, but we'll be sharing out there as well, you know, a piece of this and with the process as well. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory in what we have in writing. So I'll just pause and see if you have any questions.
Susan Manning.
So Dan, the teacher and the student input is going to come from that's going to be very structured. We're going to make sure we have that in addition to the surveys, and that's going to be, that's going to occur. Basically the committee, when I first looked at it, it looked very administrative, but it sounds like the process is going to be very collaborative and inclusive, that it's going to provide for teacher and student input in, again, sometimes the discussion is so much better in a small group.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. So when we started, we called ourselves kind of the planning committee to begin with, to talk about how we're going to do this process. And so as we went along, we realized the most important thing is gathering information, you know, in order to make decisions. And so we felt with the group that we have, that's where we're at right now, is working to make sure that we do have true voices of all, you know, very many in each of those stakeholder groups, instead of just a select few that happen to be chosen to be on a committee. So I should, you know, publicly thank as well the folks that are part of that. A couple of them are with us here, you know, this evening. So Danielle and Mitch, James Kamoku and Shelby Steele have just been fabulous in working together, you know, on this process. So we started with knowing we had a huge task in front of us, and it's really come together nice, I think, as far as the process. And again, we'll continue to keep you updated here as we move along.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? All right. Seeing none. Moving to board reports. Teaching Learning Equity Committee. Eric.
Thank you, Andrew. The Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee met last, last month. And we heard from a special speaker, Dr. Alvin Thomas from the UW School of Human Ecology, who talked a lot about the systematic change in policy that affects equity and race, and also the mental health of Black men and Black boys. And it was very insightful and informative for myself. And I think we recorded it, Dan, if anybody wants to watch it, right? They can ask and we can send it to them.
We did. Unfortunately, I was a little slow on hitting the record button. I missed the first 5 minutes, but yeah, the majority of it was recorded.
Okay. And our next meeting is on the 20th at 4:30. I will be absent. I double committed myself to coaching my daughter's soccer team. So Lorene Gage will be leading that meeting on the 20th. And we're going to get some more information, as Dan mentioned previously, about the progress of the SRO contract and the review of where that's headed. And I'm hoping that the Teaching, Learning, Equity Committee can also take a look at that and make a recommendation to the board later after we have all the information. So I'd also just like to thank Lisa Dunlock for introducing me to Dr. Thomas and helping me set up that presentation last TLE committee.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Policy Committee, Susan Manning.
So the policy committee has continued to meet, and every time we get together, we have another like 20 policies from Neola. And again, I want to thank Susan and Elizabeth for coming in prepared and reading this material. We will effectively be presenting the changes in those policies tonight. So I'll leave that report, the specific reporting out for that part. But we are continuing to meet and review really effectively 20 to 30 policies a meeting in great depth.
Thank you, Susan. Next is the Ad Hoc Sustainability Committee. Peter? Peter, you're on mute.
Thank you. The committee met last Wednesday, and as you've heard, we were awarded the grant that we applied for in January. The full amount requested, and in fact, it's our understanding we were the highest rated application. That means that we can believe that we can proceed with the project for which we received the grant, which is to install a solar installation on the high school, which covers 46%, nearly 50% of the high school's electrical needs. That project has to be completed within a year as part of the the conditions of the grant. So the idea is to move ahead with it this summer. As you know, we haven't finished the 30-day petition period for the funding, to sell the bonds, the public petition period, so that we can sell the bonds. However, that will happen on April 21st. And at that point, we can move forward with the financing and make any final decisions that we need to make about approving this. But currently, we're not in a position to approve this for another couple of weeks. Barring that, we did talk to the McKinstry folks, which we have a memo of understanding with. We have a contract yet, although we're working on that with them to perform the project. Attached to tonight's meeting for the board members is a draft of that contract, so you can look it over. That will be, when completed, a guaranteed performance contract. In other words, that McKinstry, after they perform the work, they will guarantee the financial performance of the project, and they will do so for a period of time until we are satisfied that we're meeting their requirements. And we can cancel that portion of the contract at any time. We have in the past. But essentially, as long as that is enforced, it means we can't lose money, because they will be guaranteeing the financial performance of the project. The way that the contracting will work is that they will issue a request for proposals. In fact, they've already issued a request for bids, essentially, I should say, from contractors. And of course, they're not going to approve any of those until after the board approves and we have financing in place and move forward with this project, and give them approval to move forward with the project. But the contracting is publicly bid. They had several people visit the site and return proposals, which we will have an opportunity to review before the final selection. But because of the performance contracting, McKinstry will be a general contractor for the project, so that it is within their hand, everything that's within their hands. That way they can provide the performance guarantee. There's a timeline attached to in board docs, so you can see what's happening. And we are proposing, I guess, on the 26th that we meet to approve the contract, so that they can proceed. That's after the petition period ends, and we'll know that when we have the financing in place, and then we can proceed with this. At our meeting last Wednesday, we covered a lot of ground. We started talking about our communication strategies, and additional items around the sort of the non-physical parts of the project, including how we start working with the educational aspects that we want to build in to the project. and then also how we would reach out to the community and ultimately to the people that the committee is hoping to reach, which is decision makers in institutions and K-12 schools, to show them, to provide information on how they can move forward, like we have, and make this project an example, a model that other people can build upon.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
So anybody have any
Is that
questions
Joseph?
about the timeline or the contract that we have, the draft contract that we have that's available for you to look at? And this, I've looked at this over, and it follows, sorry, just 1 second, it follows the model that we've used in the past with the improvements we've done for, energy savings. We started doing 10 years ago, where they do the work, we finance the work, and then they provide a performance guarantee. Susan, you had a question.
I just want to say that I've tried to watch this committee when I can, and the committee meetings are really, really interesting to watch, and I've enjoyed that. And the last one was amazing. These people, as individual community members, have put in an incredible amount of time, an incredible amount of work, and then to achieve the grant. So again, we should be offering special thank yous to those people for the work that they've done. One of the questions I had, well, again, they just keep taking on more work. And one of the things they've talked about extensively was how to communicate with the community about this project so that people know and can get excited about it. And I just wondered, wouldn't that be something that Katie would help you with and help facilitate? I don't know, but
Yes. In fact, Katie has put together and distributed a press release
great.
on this topic. And I don't know if you were listening to WVMO today, you might have heard about the project a little bit from Will. We've engaged with Will Nimmo. And he's been very enthusiastic about providing support and helping us with content and communication. So you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of people involved. It's a great, we were able to move on this very rapidly because of the experience and the dedication of the people involved. I wouldn't have been able to do this. The district wouldn't have been able to do this, but we certainly had this team that could jump right in there and move on very short notice.
Okay. Lorraine?
Peter, is there a way that the community can have input in this as well?
Absolutely. Right now, we haven't, going forward, we haven't formalized anything. We do have, and we have to talk, have a conversation about communication strategy, but we do want to make a lot of things available. From the board perspective, there is the opportunity for public comment in on the proposal for the financing, this 30-day comment period for the before we borrow the money to finance this. And there is a formal opportunity for the public to comment on that.
Great. Any more questions, concerns? Peter, you and the committee have done a wonderful job. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Andrew.
Next is the Monona Grove Education Foundation. Susan Manning.
The Monona Grove Education Foundation met on April 13th. They started with the superintendent report, and he covered many of the things that you are already aware of. Then under old business, they are definitely going to do the golf ball drop again this year. They're talking about doing it in the Monona site, and then again next year back in Cottage Grove. They're going to increase the number of balls to be sold to 500, so you get a chance to buy a golf ball. The funding, the things that they plan to fund with these, with what they're going with their fundraising are a play it forward plan when they're working with administration and the staff to put that forward, and that deals with meals and clothes for students and the teaching grants. They haven't finalized the golf ball drop date, and they're also looking at ways to celebrate staff because they think that's important to continue. They purchased 6 driver's education based on requests. And Krista was kind of involved in this, as I recall. They were looking for things that they could currently assist with in the district. And they purchased some driver's education books for students who aren't able to purchase those, water bottles for students who may not have them because our shared water fountains are off, and a grant to address clothing needs of students. And they approved an annual expense of $2,500 that day on that issue unanimously. And that was about it. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Susan? All right, thank you, Susan. Moving on to our possible action items. The first one is a resolution establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $1,205,000 general obligation school faculty improvement bonds, series 2021B.
Yes, so this is directly related to the solar project. Typically in a borrowing process, you approve a contract, we go to the market, we work with PMA, we sell on a day that the board meeting meets. The board approves the borrowing after the fact, because all borrowing needs to be done and approved by the board. And then 2 weeks later, we do the official closing, and then the funds start coming into the district. Due to the fact that we had this great opportunity for the grant that we've been awarded, the timeline sort of gets messed up. And in order for us to stay on schedule, we have the opportunity to set parameters for a borrowing. So this is like you approving the borrowing prior to the borrowing happening. What that does is it gives me the authority to act on behalf of the district. It sets out parameters such as that we're not going to exceed 15 years. It sets that we're not going to exceed an interest rate that PMA believes is definitely higher than what we're probably going to see on the market. It allows me to execute those documents and then turn around and come and get the formal signatures. As you saw in the timeline, we will not be borrowing these funds until after the board approves the contract with McKinstry on the 26th. If something happens and the contract is not able to be approved, then we will push back the borrowing as well. And you'll notice, like the initial resolution, it's that $1,205,000, which is the maximum amount. We won't do that amount. But there is, obviously some moving parts because of the RFP closing on April 5th, McKinstry walking through the process and vetting all those vendors that supplied an estimate or submitted official bids, and then walking through that to get that final dollar amount. But when the board approves McKinstry's contract, that would be the official amounts, and then we would subtract out the $50,000 that we will be receiving from Focus on Energy and the $250,000 that we'll be receiving from PSC. But in order to make sure that we had the parameters that was going to give us the maximum amount of borrowing power in case something did occur or the interest rates were a little higher than what we were anticipating, we did set that limit at that total project cost before the grants. In addition to that, we had to initiate that 30-day petition period, and we needed to select the dollar amounts, and that was before we knew that we were going to be awarded the grants. So to keep the ball moving so we can start this project on June 11th and move forward this summer, we've had to change up some of our timelines or normal ways of doing it to meet that, the new timeline that's very short.
Peter?
I'd just like to say a couple of things to clarify some of the comments I've heard from the public, which is this is not referendum funded borrowings. As such, it does not impact, and Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, get anything that's wrong, it does not impact the taxpayers. It doesn't show up on the tax bills like our referendum funded debt would. This is, the borrowing will be paid back out of our Fund 10 operating funds. and sort of out of our annual, just our regular annual revenue. And we can do this because given the finances that the estimates and so on of the cost and well, the amount of the grant and so on, we believe that when we do this, the estimates are that the utility savings will more than provide enough savings to pay for these bonds back. And so it should be at the beginning a very small net positive for the school district, but the taxpayer will not see this on their tax bills. And in the future, it may result in a reduction of what the taxpayer sees because it will reduce our need to do what we have done in the past, which is go to referendum for operating, a recurring operating referendum. So to the extent that we profit from this, that will reduce our need to do something like that. So there could be in the future a benefit to the taxpayers' tax bills.
That is correct.
And I would also note that the resolution limits the interest rate to 2.75%. The last in January, February, when we issued bonds or refinancing, we got 0.4%.
Susan Fox. You're on mute. You're on mute, Susan.
Never changes, does it? I would like to go ahead and move approval of a resolution establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $1,205,000 general obligation school facility improvement bonds, Series 2021B, as presented.
Second.
Oh,
Sorry,
Elizabeth
Peter.
got it. All right, Elizabeth second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, Susan Manning?
Aye.
Susan Fox?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Lorraine?
Aye.
And Andrew, aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up is the teacher retirement plan revisions.
Okay, so this is something that has been through the personnel committee, and it started during a meet and confer session, and actually a request of teachers to consider this amendment. And so I think our committee had discussion a couple times. Nicole worked with legal counsel to draft the language that would, for this additional benefit. And I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but essentially it's right now that if we have a teacher that has met the requirements and is eligible for retirement, but they haven't retired, or excuse me, eligible for the benefit, and they, if the unfortunate thing would happen that the teacher had passed away, currently that benefit does not go to their beneficiary. And we agreed it was the right thing to do to make that benefit available. So that's kind of the big picture of it. And Susan, I know you've been very involved in the committee as well. So if you want to add anything.
I don't really have anything to add. As Dan said, the request came from the MGA and we thought, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So we did talk about it and had Jared look it over and found there was no reason not to do it. So we strongly recommend approval. So with that, I will go ahead and make that motion. I would move approval of the revised teacher retirement plan as presented.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, Susan Manning?
Aye.
Susan Fox?
Aye.
Lorraine?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Peter? You're on mute, Peter.
Aye.
And Andrew, aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up is the 2021-2022 Certified Staffing Plan.
Okay, if I perhaps could begin just a quick review of the timeline and process with regard to staffing determinations each year. So it really starts with January. In January is where Jared works with our staff, our schools, and other staff to update our enrollment projections for next year, because that's the time that we need to come to the board with recommendations for open enrollment seats for the following year. So that's when our initial enrollment projections are completed. And it's fairly early in the process. And so sometimes those January projections are pretty accurate. And other times we have to make adjustments for those, throughout the spring as enrollment, requests, change. So then in February, we generally come to the board with a preliminary staffing plan based upon our projected enrollment, really looking at our elementary sections. How many sections of first grade do we project? How many of second, and so on. And we share that in February as a kind of a preliminary plan. In the meantime, we're waiting for middle and high school students to do their make their course offering selections for the following year. And then we'll generally come back in March with an updated plan based upon any staffing changes needed for those course selections. This year, we are a little bit slower in getting that together because of the pandemic and so on. So we didn't bring that updated plan in March. We said we'll do it in April, and that's where we're at this point. And so the numbers that you have before you tonight reflect two things that have happened since that initial plan in February. One is we've had updated enrollment projections for our elementary class size sections, and we are recommending some, or have made, changes, or I should say recommending changes in those sections based upon the updated enrollment projections. And then secondly, with the high school staffing or the course requests, you'll see that the one major change is an increase of a full-time position, family and consumer science, with also covers some health occupation piece in there. So that's what's reflected in this current plan. The reason that we bring it to the board for approval is, first of all, communication, make it really clear what our numbers look like from year to year. Secondly, it's also an opportunity, should we be proposing new positions or changes in programming, it's an opportunity for the board to have that as well and act on it. So for instance, the changes this year that were already presented in February were the additional positions needed with the opening of Granite Ridge. We had some additions needed for student services staffing, as well as a library media specialist, and so on. And so those are also reflected in there. So you generally will approve every individual teacher contract anytime we have a new hire or a contract amendment. The existing staff that roll over, of course, those contracts stay intact. So it's just another piece of the communication, so that as you get those approvals now, as we do hiring from the spring, there shouldn't be any surprises. So for example, this evening, you'll notice on the staff hires that you approved, one was for a library media specialist, another was for a social worker. And those are reflective to the increased FTEs required with the opening of Granite Ridge. The other ones many times are also then just replacement of staff that might have moved on, retired, or so on. So that's how it all fits together. So I think the most important thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of tonight, first of all, are the enrollment sections. The document that's attached that shows the enrollment planning, that document compared to what you saw in January and February, there were some changes in those enrollment projections, and I highlighted those in the content there, where you'll see that in Taylor Prairie for 4K, we initially projected that we might increase to 8 sections. At this time, we're only planning for 10. We actually, at this point, are planning for 8. That still can fluctuate as we take enrollment in through the spring and summer. Cottage Grove School first grade, we initially thought we would need 7 sections. At this point, it appears we will need 6 based on the updated projections. Likewise, Granite Ridge fifth grade, instead of 7 sections, 6. Glacial Drumlin 8th grade, we're actually projecting an increase. We initially thought we needed 10. Now we are projecting a need for 11 based on the current enrollment. And then, as I mentioned, the FACE department at the high school, an increase by 1. So that's the big picture as far as the changes to the staffing. And I guess I'll just address right now before we get into discussion on this. You heard some comments earlier this evening implying that some schedule changes might have impacted staffing. And there were a lot of things stated that I'm not ready to respond to tonight. We certainly will at another time. But one thing that is absolutely inaccurate is there's been absolutely no staff reduction based upon scheduling. Okay, that in music, we currently have 3 band teachers for middle and high school. The project for next year, we'll have 3. For choir, we have 2, 1 middle and 1 high school. That will stay the same. So orchestra, we have 2, that will remain 2. So there have been no changes. The changes in the music that are reflected are all K-5 based upon the number of classroom sections in those grade levels. So again, that's the big picture. Why don't I stop there and open it up to questions and discussion?
Is there any questions? Eric, and then Susan Manning.
This question is for Dan. Can you just briefly touch on the communication process that happens when you make a schedule change like this with the teachers? I know there's been some discussion about that before, but I'm curious if I could just have a kind of refresher of what that process looks like and the involvement of the teachers in that decision.
Okay. Eric, I'll be glad to answer that. I just want to be clear that you guys want to get those discussions are really about teaching assignments and not staffing. So
Dan, can you elaborate on that? Because I think I definitely understand that, but it still is somewhat confusing. So the difference between assignment and the assignment and the staffing, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I think it is important. It is tied certainly to the staffing. So for example, I think we all understand how high school schedules work, right? So if you're a math teacher, okay, we're teaching algebra and geometry and advanced algebra and pre-calc and calc. Every year, teachers in that department are assigned to various courses. And those is usually done, it is done collaboratively. It's not, obviously the principal has the final decision on those teaching assignments, but they work with staff and department chairs, or we call them coordinators here, with regard to what those assignments are. So those are what the teaching assignments are every year about which courses someone is teaching. And then as far as the FTE, of course, are the number of teachers. And in the high school, because it never comes out exactly even, as far as the number of teachers you need for every course, we do have flexibility that a standard teaching load at the high school is 5 courses. And then oftentimes we'll have teachers voluntarily teach a 6th course for some extra compensation to balance out what our needs are. And so that's how it's done at the high school, and it works out really well. Where it gets a little bit more complex, and I think maybe to where your question is, Eric, is when you have shared staff between buildings, then the principals have to work together on those schedules. And there are some things that might fluctuate. So, with regard to the music, how those are taught and who teaches what sections and so on, absolutely, that's really a more complex, situation. So.
I just got a quick follow-up, Susan, Manny. Is the deduction in the 0.55 in music affect the availability for students to participate in music? Will that have an effect on that if, for instance, more students decide to join? Right. What happens in that situation?
Great question. So no, this reduction does not have any impact on the courses offered. And you might very well see some changes between now and next school year based upon that student choice. For example, one of the things that on here that you did not see a contract amendment for is or a significant one for art, because at this point we're waiting to see what exactly the enrollment is for the elective part of that at the middle school. And if we have enough students elect, art, for example, we'll need to add some FTE and bring back and make that adjustment. So it really gets into the number of sections needed. Now, music is a little bit unique in that, as you know, bands and choirs typically are much larger class sizes than your other classes. And so there's more room for flexibility, but that still will vary on how many sections are offered based upon the student interest. So students will never be turned away just because we say we don't have space for you. We will absolutely adjust either FTE or number of sections to meet those student requests in those areas.
Susan Manning.
Yeah, Dan, I actually have a couple questions. One, I'm confused that some of the information we received this evening from the speakers was that they were actually going to be asked to teach a different class, which they've never taught before. And that will change their ability to do the team teaching. This was specifically in relation to music. And I know that we approved some additional new courses at the middle school at Glacial Drumlin. Again, what I'm not understanding very clearly is you have said very specifically to us that there is no staff reductions based on scheduling, but it just sounds like, based on the information we received tonight, that it may not, that there is a relationship between the scheduling and the coursework and who's teaching it and how they can teach their other courses based on the scheduling changes. So again, I'd like to hear a little more about that. And for me, I don't understand how you can go to a 90-minute class as a teacher and you've got to entirely change your whole curriculum and how you do it and how you work with other teachers and the prep time and the scheduling time. For me, I need to see the scheduling and any changes in the coursework to feel that I can make a good, solid decision about the staffing. To make a decision about staffing tonight, for me, it would be very, very uncomfortable. I think we need to, again, understanding we only have one board meeting a month, but it's already, we've already been here for 2+ hours working on this. We've still got a bunch of work to do. I think it would be really helpful to have a meeting where you talk about the scheduling first, and then you can show us clearly that there's no change to the staffing based on the scheduling. Then we can really see it and we can validate ourselves from the information you provide that there is no relationship. I just right now don't have the comprehensive information I need to feel comfortable making the staffing decision tonight. And maybe that's my inadequacy. I'm sorry to the board if that is, but I feel like I don't, again, I'm a health information data analyst. I need the information to feel comfortable making this decision.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Susan. So first of all, let me clarify for all the board members. You will have, at next month in May, we are planning on a board report with the GDS team on schedule for next year and the whole process and what changes were made and what weren't made. And so absolutely, you'll have that. If there are board members that are not comfortable approving this document tonight, that's fine. We don't need you to approve that this evening. What I want you to just to be aware of is that next meeting, when we bring forth approval for a contract for a new FACE teacher, that you're aware why we are hiring a FACE teacher, so that's the approval that really matters, is when you approve those contracts. So this is really for informational purposes. And so absolutely, no problem with that. If you want to, wait until you have that more information, and I think you should see that how those are related and exactly what that looks like. Be glad to go through that. And I said, we have that on the docket.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For next month.
So if it's
relieve some stress for tonight.
if it's okay with the rest of the board, would we like to table this to next month?
Postpone till next month.
Postpone.
Yeah.
Postpone to
Well,
next month.
I wouldn't. Oh, okay. So we're comfortable with next month. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
Susan Fox.
Before we do that, I guess, because it was raised by a couple people that the team teaching and band that's been going on at the high school might not be possible with the schedule, due to the schedule change at the middle school, which to me kind of is connected to this staffing plan in the sense that if we're changing the schedule so that somebody can't travel now, does that mean we should be looking at some additional, I don't know, I guess I'd like to hear more about that piece. And then when we do this presentation next week, I guess I'm taking the opportunity to talk about that a little bit. That when Susan talked about some people teaching a class they hadn't taught before, I think what you might have been talking about, Susan, was a couple of the music teachers at the middle school who now will have advisory periods that they didn't have previously. And by doing that with the schedule, that means they no longer can provide the individual kinds of lessons that they were doing during that period. So again, maybe not an FTE total thing, but maybe it is because maybe there's somebody else that could do those advisories. I don't know. Or maybe that's a philosophical thing where the desire is to have all teachers do them. I don't know. But I guess I'd like to hear more about that in that presentation, the total impact on music when it's presented, in addition to hearing more about the process. I guess I'd be interested too, when we hear that presentation, on hearing about the comparison between what kids are offered now and what they'll be able to fit into their schedules with the new schedule. Because clearly there are more offerings, which is a positive. Does it make them make more choices? That's not necessarily a bad thing. As a parent who never made my kids make choices, and I'm not sure it was always the right decision. They always took everything, which isn't always the best. But I would like to hear more about all of that. And I would also, as a result, feel more comfortable voting on this at the same time. The only other point I wanted to make about that, if we table it to that board meeting, if we feel like we can really have a good, solid discussion so that we understand this schedule, and I because I'm a visual person when it comes to these schedules, I would hope that would be part of the presentation. If we're going to have it on a regularly scheduled board meeting night, May 12th, I'd like there not to be a lot of other things on that agenda in order to really have a discussion. If it looks like there will be, I'd be more in favor of having this at a special meeting. So I'm just throwing that out there too, before we just postpone it to May 12th. Do you have a thought about that? I mean, maybe other people do. Elizabeth has a comment too.
Elizabeth?
I appreciate you saying that, Susan. I agree with you. I feel like a lot of things are getting conflated, right? So there's like staffing allocations because of declining enrollment or changes in enrollment, and then there's scheduling concerns. And I think what was brought up today around kind of changes in the co-teaching, co-planning model is something that, we definitely need to discuss because it is such a pinnacle of how we operate here in the district. And I think when we conflate those things, it makes it really difficult to have like a discussion that follows a linear path. And so I also would appreciate sort of having the whole story and see how the pieces are to kind of place together, but doing that either at a separate meeting or at a meeting where we don't have an agenda that's going to take us until 10 or 11 o'clock. Because then I feel like we don't really get into the details that we need to get to. So I appreciate that and I agree.
Okay, Lorraine?
Sure. Another aspect and a complaint that was indicated was that teacher feedback was not included in this. And so I'm hoping that the teachers would be able to collaborate or talk with the principals and an administration. Is that possible, that they can have some in-depth conversations?
Well, again, I don't want to get into, there were a number of things stated tonight that I heard for the first time, and so I'm not really prepared to get into in depth. That we will make sure that every one of those questions are answered. But I can say very confidently that there were some things stated tonight that were not accurate, and that the teachers were very, very much involved with the planning. So, but we'll speak to the specifics of that when we present next month.
Okay.
Okay. Susan Mann?
Yeah, the other thing that was brought to our attention, and it's really hard for us as board members because we don't always see the information that goes out to parents. And then, you know, you're walking down the street and it takes you 3.5 hours to do a 1-mile walk because everybody's grabbing you saying, I really want to talk about this. And this is a major issue. But apparently, again, just because I don't expect every principal to send us every note to parents, but if you just alert us or tell us sometimes, but in a letter to parents, this is hearing from the community, we strongly suggest that incoming sixth graders take one music course and explore every course offering. And again, what I've seen evolve from the time of my children to these children is that these kids are taking lots of music, and we have incredibly skilled students. And there is very strong research on the connection between good learning and music. And so again, I thought that was interesting. Then it just goes on to say, however, we understand that many students have a passion for music. So if a student does take more than one music course, please understand which courses will not fit into the schedule this year.
Hey, Susan. Sorry to bother you. It's really hard to hear you when you turn your head this way. So I'm not sure how many people that.
Here, let me read it. Here, does that make better? We strongly suggest that incoming sixth graders take one music course and explore every course area offering. Hence, we understand that many students have a passion for music, so if a student does take more than one music course, please understand which courses will not fit into the schedule this year. Courses in all areas are offered all 3 years of middle school. I don't know how many students normally take. It was kind of like when our kids were at the high school, no one ever sat with them and said, including sometimes in the counseling area, and said, by the way, you can take 2 science courses. If you have an opening, you can take 2 science courses. I was given the impression by the people that were talking to me that a lot of the students did take 2 music courses. And again, understanding there's new course offerings, they've opened up new areas. They're trying to involve students in all different kinds of things, and we pass those new offerings and support those. Is the scheduling or the new class offerings can affect like an 8th grade student who normally takes 2 music classes? I don't know. That's why I really want to see this scheduling and have time to have a full discussion and ask questions about that. Because it's not fair to Chris for me to get a parent thing and not be able to have a conversation with her. So that would be very helpful to me to have that time.
Yep, thank you. Absolutely. We'll make sure that the team's ready to address that.
Peter?
You know, my concern, I'm very much opposed to the tail wagging the dog. And when we're talking about an educational decision, sometimes, you know, schedules and resources of other times drive those decisions. But we should always start with the what we're trying to accomplish educationally before we make the decision. Sometimes say, yeah, the schedule won't let us do what we like to do, so we can do it. But we need to start from the educational place, not from the point of, well, we have a new schedule because we have to, you know, make some changes because the 5th graders are moving out of Glacial Drumlin, and so we're going to change how we teach things. So we have to change how we teach things. It should be the other way around. And so I would, you know, like to hear how, you know, these changes, particularly related to this co-teaching and how we're making these changes, I would like to hear how those decisions are being made. And I need to be confident that they're coming from a place, from a robust place, an educationally robust place to make these decisions. And that said, I do understand that this issue of the traveling teachers has been on the radar for a while, that it's expensive. It means that we have teachers who are driving rather than being in class teaching students, and it is not a desirable situation. So I understand, and I also understand that we're moving, you know, things are changing in Glacial Drumlin because the 5th graders moving out, and that creates a moment where we do have to have change. But I do want to see that these decisions are being made, you know, with the strategic plan in mind and with education first. Secondly, to the point that Susan just made, where we seem to be discouraging middle school students from taking 2 music classes, I would note that for the choir class, in order to be in in show choir, there's a requirement that you take choir class, and that is a result. That is one of the issues if we're concerned about students taking two music classes and nothing else. One of the issues driving those decisions in terms of students is the fact that they can't be in an extracurricular, in this case the show choir, unless they're in choir unless they take choir in the schedule. And the result for many of those students, some of those students, they end up taking choir and another music because they want to be in show choir and participate in the other music. And I've always been opposed to any requirements, any school requirements for extracurriculars, any academic requirements for extracurriculars. And I would suggest that we eliminate that we, particularly if we have concerns about, well, take one student, one music class in middle school, that we should look at that requirement. And I do not support that requirement that you have to take choir to be in show choir.
Okay. Eric?
Well, Dan, earlier you referenced the previous information and speakers of the teachers. And I think you said there is some inaccuracies, if I'm correct. That concerns me a little bit because if we have 5 teachers saying something or whatever it is, and there's inaccuracies, that tells me that there's a communication problem potentially, and more importantly, a perception issue happening here. So I would like a little bit more time to explore that and get to the bottom and find out what that is exactly, because it's happening at one end, and I would like more information about figuring out where that is.
Susan Fox.
So what I think I'm hearing from everybody is that we would like to have a really thorough discussion of this schedule change, about what was the thinking behind it, how did it come about, what was the process, the whole thing. So I go back to the other question I raised, which was, do we want to do this in a special meeting, or do we feel comfortable having it at the May 12th meeting?
I would suggest that we postpone this and let Andrew and Dan work out what meeting, whether we have it in May 12th or in a special meeting.
I would just hope that it's not a really long one, as we said.
I'd like to do
I would
it
really like
within
to have, I would really like to
weeks.
do this justice, because I think it's a big topic. And if it takes us 2 hours to discuss just this, I want to have the 2 hours. So I don't want us to be rushed having, I'm hoping it won't be that long, but there are a lot of things to look at. And the question of, as Susan raised, of switching to 90 minutes, what are we doing to prepare teachers to teach that way? I just remember when the high school went to the block schedule, that was a big deal. There was about a year of planning that went into that, with teachers working to get up to speed and this is the core classes we're talking about. So I want to hear about all of that. So so I'm willing to leave it to you guys, but you guys talk about it and figure out what the whole agenda looks like and what would best serve us. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to postpone it. Let's get to when we get to future meeting dates, we'll discuss what a date would work. Okay. All right. Get this up here. Moving to the 2021-2022 T4K provider contract.
Okay, this is just an annual renewal. So this is, we currently have one offsite provider for T4K with IHM, and we're recommending a renewal of that contract for next school year.
Peter?
The last time we did the renewal, that I asked to see the providers' statements on non-discrimination, if they had any policy or statements on their employment and their non-discrimination policies, and I haven't seen that. And I would like to reiterate that request, and I would also like to ask if other board members are interested in that, would like to see that. They are bound by the terms of the contract. They are bound by our own our policy, our requirements on that. It's my understanding. However, I would like to see that the providers have their own statements. That's just to see that they are trying to do the same thing. That they are concerned the way we are about issues with diversity. in the way we do business. So I'm not asking for any particular requirements on those statements. I'm just asking to see if they have statements that they be provided to us. Statements or policy.
Lorraine?
I'd like to.
No, I think that's a valid point, and I appreciate that you brought that up, Peter. So yes, I would be interested as well.
All right. Elizabeth?
I agree with Peter, so thanks for bringing that up. Other question I have, not related to this one, but related to the sites that used to be in Cottage Grove. Dan, have we made any movements in terms of getting sites back there, or are we just going to continue to absorb it at Taylor Prairie?
Right. Well, so those sites chose not to participate this past year, so we went ahead and hired our own staff for on-site, and so at this point, we have it staffed in our building. Plus, we have space now with the opening of Granite Ridge. So in the short term, there aren't any plans. Certainly long term, we'll certainly always continue to explore that as an option.
Great, thank you.
Peter?
Do you have any feedback on why they're not participating this year?
Yeah, they were not able to basically accommodate, our student needs with our virtual learning at the beginning of the school year.
Susan Fox?
If we, so what I think I'm hearing is that there are people interested in hearing if there's some kind of equity statement from the one remaining provider, which would be Immaculate Heart of Mary, before we do this approval. So I'm just wondering, is that an issue if we put off that approval until May? Or, I mean, is there, I know you set up your schedule at the beginning of the year when these things come up, and if we need to, do we need to know this ahead of time? Or, I mean, we would have space needs, I assume, at Winnequa if we don't have an alternate site. So
I guess let me just say this, as Peter said, they have fulfilled the terms of our agreement. And
Okay.
so I don't know, I will investigate, but I am not confident saying that they will have the type of statement that you're looking for. And if they don't, I don't think that would preclude, I would still recommend you approve the contract. Again, they have to follow the non-discrimination rules that we have as a public school institution. We could certainly engage in that conversation, but I certainly wouldn't expect them to, I don't know what they may or may not have right now.
Peter?
My goal is I want to raise awareness of this issue. And part of that would be in these contractors that we have. And I think we should think about it in terms of all the contracts that we issue and make, but I just want to raise the issue. And if they don't have a statement, they do employment and so on outside of the contract with the school. And I would just like to know that what they have thought about and where they are and what they have thought about. And maybe this gives them a little bit of encouragement to develop their own, to think about themselves and develop their own policies and statements. And particularly going forward, I mean, I don't see this now here foreseeably in the future, but in the future, if we have multiple people vying for these positions and one of them has a statement that appeals to us and one doesn't, that might make a difference in the future. But it's not an issue now, but I just want to raise the visibility of this issue to the community businesses, especially that we do, community organizations that we do business with.
Susan Fox?
well, yeah, along that line, the policy committee had some discussion about that very topic. And one of the thoughts was really that, just asking, do you have a statement? Not just as a gentle, at least a gentle nudge, that we would appreciate knowing what you're thinking about and that you have thought about it, and raising awareness, as you just said. So not necessarily tying it to a contract or not in this situation, but just asking the question. So I guess just for my own clarification, what maybe then I'm hearing people say is, you might be willing to go ahead and approve this site for tonight, but you would still like to follow up with a request for a statement. Is that correct? Just so I know what we're asking.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing too.
Okay. And Elizabeth and Lorraine, since you chimed in on that, is that kind of what you were thinking?
And this also makes sure that they are aware of, they don't have to read through all of our policies to find what they're about. Make sure that they are aware of it. They thought about it and they are aware of it.
Right. Okay.
For us. So
I think that makes sense. Okay. Then I'd be prepared to move approval of the T4K provider contract for 2021-2022 school year with Immaculate Heart of Mary School as presented.
I'll second that.
Right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Susan Manning? Susan Fox?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Lorraine? Lorraine?
Unmute.
No.
No, she's not on mute.
She's trying to.
Aye.
Oh, there you go, okay. Elizabeth?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
And Andrew, aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next is the employment contract for Winter Cross School Associate Principal.
I would move
Go ahead,
approval.
Peter.
I would move approval of 2021-2023 employment contract for Winnequa School Associate Principal Jesse Starr as presented.
Second.
Oh, that sounds close.
You,
I'm gonna
you
give it
give
to
that one to
Elizabeth.
Manning because I took the last one from
Give it
her.
to the last. Okay, I give it.
Yeah,
to
no, no.
Susan.
I'll graciously give it to you, Susan.
I know, it shows that we met this person, and again, with Angie's help and everything else, we're all first time in several weeks, we're smiling.
All right.
Yeah, it seems like a really great hire.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Susan Manning?
Aye.
Susan Fox?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Lorraine?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
And Andrew, aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving to discussion items. Phase 5 school reopening plan.
So I asked for this to be on the discussion item because I have a couple more specific questions, Dan, for you about the reopening plan. So I'm just going to go through some of my questions, and then I'm sure the board will jump in if they have any additional ones. So the first question I have is that there was a survey after we voted at the last board meeting sent out, and in that survey, I know there were some issues with the time. So the survey that was sent out was half days. And I just want to clarify that it seems that based on communication from you on a board update, that some of those transportation issues have been worked out. And now the plan for 6 to 12 is 4 days, keeping the schedule that they have, which is the full day schedule, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So was there any confusion or feedback that you got based on that survey going out with families anticipating that was going to be a half day and now knowing that it's a full day? Did we potentially maybe lose some students because the survey results for the 4-day in-person for 6-12, I thought was 76%. And then when I look at the reopening plan, you have 6-8 at 69% and 9-12 at 64%. So it seems like there's some discrepancy there with those numbers.
Yeah, right. So I immediately when the survey closed, I did share with the board in a memo, here are for the people who completed the survey, here are the percentages. Now, not 100% of the parents completed the survey, in fact, well short of that. And so then with the final actual registration for students, the numbers that were reported to this evening are students who are actually registered for that. So you're right, those numbers were inflated by the people who completed the survey, but then in the follow-up, they're accounting for every student, those numbers change slightly.
So the correct numbers are 6 to 8, we have 69% returning, and from 9 to 12, we have 64% returning.
That is correct.
Okay. And then my next question is, with some of the concerns raised about transportation and lunch, has there been any development or progress on those two issues? It seems like transportation there has. How about lunch?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, Eric, at middle or high school lunch.
Well, I think it would be both. I know that one of the concerns was the lunchtime with all the students coming back, because that was a gathering time and where students would be in one place at one time. So has there been some progress as far as maybe the lunch schedules being staggered? Or one of the things we talked about was maybe having moving some to the outside. Has there been any update on those issues?
Yeah. So I guess, we are serving lunch at the middle school. The high school is a grab and go. So I guess I could defer to Chris, in anticipation of the additional students coming next week. Have you made any changes to how we're going to accommodate, lunch as far as where they're eating and so on?
Yes, we do have the lunchroom set up the way that we plan to use it next week, and we have tweaked our lunches. Our biggest strategy during lunch is we're trying to do every other seat, so it's about 3 feet. But we're also like, it doesn't take very many middle school kids more than 10 minutes to eat. So we are trying to just, encourage them to eat and go outside. On days when it is nice outside, it will be very easy for kids to eat outside. We have not, brought in any more tables or anything like that. But right now, we think we do have it planned where they can be 3 feet apart at lunch. And we also are getting through the lines very quickly. And we have our zones set up for recess.
And then has there, Dan, do you anticipate that based on the survey that was sent out for half days and now that it's full days, that there might be, what if families like change their mind? Do they have an opportunity to still request for a full day, or is that number kind of capped now because of planning and stuff that we have?
Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by full days. The schedule hasn't changed.
Okay, the schedule hasn't changed, but when you sent out a survey, didn't the survey say half days on it?
No, the survey itself simply, we currently have 2 days a week. The survey was, do you want your child, when we transition to 4 days a week, would you like to make a change? Now, in the narrative in the emails that the principal sent to parents, okay, they reminded them that you should plan on no change. Here's the current schedule, and that's what you should base, that on. And that hasn't changed.
So why was there some confusion from the community about that then? I'm curious.
I'm not sure. I think the email communication was pretty clear.
Okay. Based on what the results that the correspondence I had, there was a lot of confusion based on that issue. So I don't know if it came from the email I'm just trying to get some clarification.
Yeah.
If it came from the email from the principals or if it came from the survey that was sent out. According to you, you're saying that it didn't come from the survey and it had maybe had something to do with the email, but you're not sure.
Well, let me just say this. This is conjecture on my part, but if you do recall, I had a slide last month when we thought busing was going to be, a major issue, where we thought we were going to have to schedule. And so I put a tentative schedule on the slide that showed a different schedule than what we currently have. And so the people who actually watched the board meeting and saw that slide, or if they didn't watch the board meeting, probably more importantly, and just looked at the slides that were posted online, absolutely that could have led to confusion of, well, here's this slide with one schedule, but then the principal communication was not the same as that. So I do think that's fair that perhaps that part might cause confusion. I think for the folks who actually watched the board meeting, as you recall, there was a lot of discussion about that and a lot of concern raised by board members. Can't we try to do something about the transportation, and make that work and so on? So there's some context to it if people who actually watched the meeting, but I think that is fair. If someone simply looked at the slides without that context, that would be confusing. There wasn't an explanation to why one schedule was on a slide and different information was shared. I think that's fair.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and I probably should have alluded to that because that was my confusion as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I apologize for that. So we're in phase 5 right now, and what is the next step from here? Is there going to be a phase 6 after this that might include 5 days, or do you anticipate phase 5 is kind of carrying us off to the end of the year?
Yeah. So just to clarify, we're not there yet. It begins for the middle school next Monday, and then for the high school the week after on the 26th. And we are planning as though that is the final phase and that will finish out the school year.
Okay. And then I would like to get more, this isn't going to come now, but I'm just going to put it out there that I would like to maybe at the next board meeting get a update on next year's plans, or at least, an outlook of what that might look like as well.
Oh, absolutely, that's fair. And I can tell you we're having those discussions. Of course, there's not a final, but no doubt that's a really important thing. I agree. We should share that or have that conversation next month. Yeah.
And I think just, the earlier the better, so people can plan and looking forward. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Susan Fox had something, then I go to Lorraine.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've been kind of assuming we'd be back full-time in person next year, but the one question that might be still out there is that if there are some families who still prefer virtual, whether that's even possible or not. For elementary, it might be more likely than the high school. And middle school is harder because of all the certification of teachers and the variety of all the stuff we've already talked about. So yeah, I appreciate any thinking along that line for going into the fall. But I've told the few people who've asked that I'm only speaking for myself. But right now, if things continue the way they are, I wouldn't see any reason why we wouldn't be back in person. Wearing masks most likely and following some rules like this, but that's what it would look like to me. Then I guess the only other thing would be any other information about somebody had raised the issue about, I'm really happy to see the graduation will be outside. We can do that. Somebody had raised the question about Senior Recognition Day and just as those pieces end of the year kinds of celebrations fall into place. I'd like to hear more about those as well. Thanks.
And so if you don't mind just jumping in real quick, thank you. That what you described, I should make it clear to all the board members, we absolutely are planning that for next fall, we will have a normal schedule 5 days a week. And then what we're exploring though is, do we still need a virtual option for some parents, which we think is very likely. So that's where what we're looking at. Okay, how might we be able to provide that next year? Might it be similar to what we're doing this year? Might it be different? And so we'll be ready to have that conversation at our next meeting about where we're at in that planning process. And our goal absolutely is to have that in place by the end of the school year, so parents know.
Okay, thanks.
And the safety precautions too, right, Dan, for next year?
Lorraine?
My question was addressed, so it was just the virtual option for next year. So thanks.
And I know that as far as graduation, I had already mentioned to Dan about some opportunities. Hopefully we can get in Madison if things go down a little bit. We talked about a couple of places too. But we're just going to have to wait and see what these orders do.
Well, and along that line, one other comment, because the question was raised about families being able to travel if we do use the Lake Mill Stadium. I would assume we could think about buses. I mean, we used to do that for away games. I used to be the pep club advisor way long time at high school, and we used to rally out a bunch of buses and people would load on the buses to go to away games. So I'm just thinking that's something to just keep in mind. If we are going to ask people to travel that far, if there are people who would need that kind of transportation, we could think about it. Thanks.
Susan, I am sorry for disagreeing with you, but remember, we have to physically distance. We can't pack buses with people.
Right.
And secondly, I'll take a little shot at our Monona friends here. I live in Cottage Grove. My drive to Lake Mills is about the same as it is into Monona. So for our east side families,
it's not a bad drive. So I'm assuming. Okay. All right.
Well, again, I disagree. I think that there may be people in this community that don't have transportation, and understanding you have to physically distance in the bus. I want to make sure if we're going to offer this in Lake Mills, and again, I'm still exploring a closer location. I appreciate that we have something. I don't want us to feel flippant about a discussion about buses. I want us to at least think about it, what the cost would be, and whether we need to do it or find another location.
Well, or just that a family that would have that issue would know they could contact the district and we'd figure something out, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If that's an issue for someone. Thanks.
All right, Lorraine?
I guess in regards to graduation, is there kind of a timeline that you're looking for? Because there's, maybe families that are coming out of town for graduation as well, so.
Yeah, Mitch, I believe that everything's been confirmed, right? Communication has gone to parents.
So right now, we are confirmed for Lake Mills on Saturday, the 5th at 11 a.m. If as Andrew alluded to, any changes, obviously it would be the same weekend, and we try to keep that same date and time.
And just while we're on the subject, because we have a couple new board members who've not been able to participate in an in-person graduation, board members do participate in the ceremony, so we should all have that on our calendars.
You have to drive to Lake Mills, guys.
That's okay. I don't mind that at all. I know we
understand
had
that. That's 'cause you have a car.
We had a new board member one year who didn't realize that we actually hand out diplomas, and so just did not come to the graduation, and then was kind of appalled later to find out, that it actually is significant that we be there. So I just want to make sure people are aware of that. Thanks.
Yes.
Actually, one of the highlights, I think.
Yeah.
So
I guess while we're talking about it, I should probably share it, because I don't think this is confidential at all, that yes, we have explored other sites as well. The one indoor site that we were interested in was the Lion Energy Center. Yeah. At this point, it's not available because we still do have the indoor mass gathering limits in Dane County. And so that's not possible. If those were to change, I think we would perhaps still consider that. Obviously, it would be a wonderful, large venue. But so that is one of the other things that was on the table. But at this point, that would not be possible.
Yeah. And Lake Mills has a beach too, so we can go to the beach right after the graduation. Just put out there. All right. Moving to policy revisions, deletions, first reading. Susan Manning, you're up.
Are there any questions? The only thing that I would just remind the board is that one of the things we requested, which is helpful to us, is if you do go through this material and have questions or revisions, if you could give us a quick email and let us know that you're contemplating that. What we generally have tried to recommend is that you make the recommendation for the change in writing. The other thing I think that might be helpful, Dan, because we have so many policies, I think it would be really helpful to post the minutes. That's one thing that I've got here in front of me. Post the minutes from all those meetings, because it specifically explains that generally these are non-substantive changes from Neola to clarify kind of old language that needs to be a little bit better. Then probably 10% or so, or maybe a few more, there was a statutory change, so we needed to change a definitional piece based on statute, and we make sure the statutory reference is in there. So it's not anything that basically we've invented. We basically are just responding to Neola legal counsel that says, we didn't write this well enough the first time, we want to add clarity here. And then there's been some minor changes in law. They've changed this word to this word. And so, but when we do that, we review absolutely everything, every piece. So generally the first reading just says, okay, guys, this does show you how much work this committee has done. And I'm thanking Susan and Elizabeth again for their incredible work. So again, the minutes I think will help a lot if you're really interested in one or two of the policies. It'll show the discussion that we've had and why we made the decision we did. And if you have any questions, please send them to me, and I will also check the minutes for you and do research and try and answer the questions. There's just so many statutes. Yes, Peter?
Yeah.
My question is, are all of these proposed changes just, do they come straight from Neola, or were there any that, you know, were originated from other source, or is this all just standard Neola stuff, updates?
Yeah, great question. Every one of these were recommended.
Dan,
Yeah,
do you?
every one of these were on the Neola update. Our committee did make, you know, didn't just take the recommended changes, you know, verbatim on everything, but the policies themselves, I'm pretty confident were all part of the updates.
They
No, and we
were,
did,
and
we
the
did
only
look at some policies.
All right, Susan
Well,
Fox first.
Yeah, I was just going to say the only thing, we did have a few that were referred to Krista, for example, for her review. We have some technology ones we're still working on because Casey's been so busy all year that she hasn't had time to really sit down and go through them. So when staff needs to review specific ones, you know, we have had that reviewed by staff. I'm looking at a couple here. The one about head lice was one that we had reviewed by staff, nursing staff, but it was a Neola recommendation. And you know, sometimes we'll ask for additional legal advice on something, but otherwise, all of them originated with Neola. None of them are ones that we thought, hey, this would be a good idea. So yeah. The other thing we always do is we look at WASB policies as well when we're looking at these, just to see if we think the wording is odd or we don't like it. We'll look to see if there are better ideas, and we might make some tweaks around it. But
I've also done some language tweaks with like an equity lens. So occasionally we'll get a policy that comes in that's in the binary, for example, the gender binary, and really thinking about how we can make sure that our equity focus is living through our policies.
Right.
And that wouldn't necessarily come through an annual update.
Right.
Oh, and you can also, the other thing is you can see from the minutes that we did look at some policies. You had specifically requested that we look at the purchasing policy, and we sent that to Jared, and we also reviewed it ourselves. And we are continuing discussion on that in terms of an addition to the policy language relating to support for equity. I think right now, Jared's recommendation is that he always makes an inquiry about whether or not the contractors have a statement in relation to that. And so we're still reviewing that and trying to find other sample policies that actually have language in there.
Well, and that was one of the points that there aren't
we're not
any
done.
in K-12 schools right now, and with the exception of Madison had one, but we also got some legal advice on that one as well. And that's part of the reason we haven't made changes at this point. It gets into a really murky legal issues.
It's still on the agenda for discussion. We've looked at it now 3 or 4 times. It's still there.
All right, any more further discussion? All right. Seeing none, moving to school renovations construction update.
Okay, so the executive summary that we get every couple of weeks is attached, but in addition, I have a few additional photos that we just received this week that I thought you might be interested to see, you know, specifically with Granite Ridge and how it's coming along. So everything's on schedule. Again, I believe it's scheduled to be complete in mid-July, and then probably more as we have the updates these next month or so, as we move on to the other buildings and the, you know, the stadium is happening right now, but then this summer, of course, we got this phase 2 of the Winnequa, you know, renovation. So everything's going great and on schedule.
Right, Susan Manning.
Yeah, so, and Dan, this isn't directly related, but Joyce said she was going to continue to work on rescheduling the school visits, because I just think it would be fun, you know, to be able to see these kids actually in the new renovated areas and in person in the schools. And when others were unable to make that date, I was the only one that was going to go, and I just didn't feel it was fair to administrative staff to spend that amount of time, 3 hours, just for one board member. And I wanted us all to have the opportunity to go. So Joyce said she'd keep working on trying to find a date for that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Susan, reminder. I agree. I would love for the board members to see the spaces now with the students in them, particularly at Winnequa, those renovated spaces. But it's also an opportunity. There are going to be some renovations happening at Cottage Grove this summer. And so it can speak to those where you see the before part now and before that happens. So I think what we'll do this time, last time I think we gave you a date and said, can you make it? Well, we try to give you a couple dates and see if we can find one that works best, for the majority of people interested in attending. So we'll definitely get that out here soon.
Thanks, Dan. Future meeting dates. So we do have the reorganization meeting coming up April 26th, and then so we need to talk about, do we want to have this special meeting after maybe that Wednesday, or do we wait till the meeting May 12th for the board meeting?
Yeah, so if you don't mind,
Sure.
Andrew, the first thing with the reorganization meeting, I put on there location to be determined. I would ask the board tonight, would you want to consider an in-person meeting for the reorg, just like you did with the annual meeting in the auditorium? It's not necessary. Last year we did the reorg virtually, but remember you need to do some voting that evening. And there is an opportunity to do voting through the Zoom poll that worked fairly well last year. But I thought if you want to have an in-person meeting, we would use the auditorium so we could make sure we are able to have physical distancing. But I do think whatever you decide, we did check with Will Nimmo about the live streaming capabilities, and the auditorium would be preferable because that's where the equipment is. But at this point, it would have to be an all or nothing. We would need all 7 of you there. We don't have the technical capabilities to have some person the majority of you in person and a couple of you Zooming and trying to deal with that technology. And so I don't think it's necessarily by any means a requirement, but it'd just be a preference on your part. And then the second part of that is at that reorganizational meeting, one of the key things you do is vote on the meeting schedule for the next year, not only the times, but also location. So that'd be a good opportunity as well about looking ahead about, whether we want to continue virtually for now, what kind of things we want to look at, and even the idea of how many meetings. We've talked, I think I've heard some feedback about maybe considering, to 2 meetings a month again. So we'll have that be part of that discussion. So I know I'm kind of going through several things here. I would like to, suggest hold off on scheduling a special meeting at this time, because I think depending on what you decide on your regular meeting schedule, that will help us determine when, which meeting to put that report on.
I'm
Susan?
perfectly happily. No, I'm sorry.
No, Susan had her hand. Susan,
I was
Sure.
going to say, we are going to vote on the solar panel the final resolution related to that on that reorg at the reorg meeting, correct? I mean, I heard the same night, whether that's at a.
Oh, thank you. You're right. So we do have one business item that evening. That's correct.
And then otherwise, whatever people prefer, I can do either in person or a Zoom is fine with me for that.
Peter?
The Zoom works for me, and I'm happy to leave the other issue up to the discretion of the board president and the superintendent to figure out when an appropriate time is, depending on the schedules for the various meetings and the other issues that come up.
Okay. Susan Manning?
Yeah, I'm willing to come in person because I think that would be helpful to the board and to the superintendent at this particular meeting. As long as we do the spacing and the masks. I mean, that's what we're asking our teachers to do right now.
Lorraine?
I'm willing to come in person as well.
Elizabeth?
I'm fine coming in person, and just for information on the board, I'll be whatever outside my 2-week window for my vaccine by then too.
Okay. Eric?
I would prefer in person.
Okay, well, I'm good with that. It sounds fine.
There's a 6. I'm good with in person too. So it seems like we'll just do the in person.
Can is there going to be an issue with if a person is online though? Isn't that going to be an issue, Dan?
Well, it's going to be a challenge. We can make what the challenge is with matching up with the live streaming and connecting, because right now with our Zoom, there's a delay, and with the microphones and so on. And so now prior to the pandemic, we have on occasion had board members join just via phone only. And so we'll have to work out the technology, and that might be a better solution to make things, work that way. So I think we could accommodate, but I just wanted to be clear that we don't have a great solution right now. And if that's something in the future, when you decide to come back in person and you want to leave it optional, we're going to have to spend some money and get some technology in place to make that work really efficiently.
Okay. So go ahead, Susan.
Well, I thought I just heard everybody say they'd be willing to come in person for this meeting. Didn't.
Except
Oh,
Peter.
I'm sorry. I thought Peter said he was going to be
Yeah,
online. I didn't hear correctly.
I thought you said you could either one.
Yeah, I can do. I don't see any reason not to do online, but I can do either one.
Okay. So that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Can we just do phone for Peter? So, but if
Well,
all
let's
of us
do
are
it in
safe
person
and we do the airplane arms, I think we'll be fine.
Zombie arms. I like that.
Zombie
So
arms.
we will, all right, so we'll schedule, we've already reserved the auditorium in case that was your choice. So we'll have that there. And then during the annual meeting, when you discuss meeting dates for next year, we can pick up this discussion about virtual or, how we're going to, that can be an ongoing conversation as well, about the in-person, meetings. So, and then we could have Will, give some more detail too about what the technology challenges may or may not be. Because one of the issues we have is if, in the past, we've always had our student workers do the, live streaming work. And right now with the pandemic, we don't have as many people available, as well with that. So, so anyway, we'll talk more about that or continue that conversation, I should say.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Dan. So we're here to, can I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion, anything? All in favor? Peter?
Aye.
Susan Fox?
Aye.
Susan Manning?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Lorene?
Aye.
Andrew? Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for having a wonderful meeting.